You hear the vibration of your phone on the wooden table. It is a simple text.
Hey, I am in your neighborhood. Mind if I drop by for 10 minutes? Suddenly, your heart sinks. A cold wave of anxiety washes over your chest. You look around your living room and all you see are flaws. The half-empty coffee cup, the blanket thrown carelessly over the sofa, the dust dancing in a stray beam of sunlight.
But it is more than just the mess. It is a feeling of being hunted. You love this person. They are your friend, your family, your inner circle. Yet the thought of them crossing your threshold feels like a breach of security.
You start to panic clean, your movements frantic, your mind racing with excuses to say no.
But your fingers are already typing, "Sure, see you soon." The moment you hit send, you feel a deep sense of resentment. Not at them, but at the situation. You spend the next 10 minutes scrubbing the sink as if your life depends on it. Wondering why you are like this? Why does a simple act of hospitality feel like a home invasion? Why does the presence of another human being, even one you cherish, feel like a drain on your very soul? You might think you are antisocial. You might think you are a bad friend or a broken host. You might feel a heavy blanket of guilt because society tells us that a happy home is an open home. But I am here to tell you that you are not broken. You are not cold. And you are certainly not alone. What you are experiencing is a profound biological and psychological mechanism. Your home is not just a building of brick and mortar. For your brain, it is the only place on this entire planet where the war ends. It is your sanctuary. And when that sanctuary is threatened, your nervous system reacts exactly the same way it would to a predator at the cave entrance. This is the science of why you hate having guests over. And it is time we stop apologizing for it. To understand this visceral reaction, the analytical mind must first examine the concept of territorial security. Evolution has hardwired the human brain to view the primary living space as the ultimate fortress. For thousands of years, the cave or the hut was the only place where the early human could lower the guard. Outside the walls, the world was a theater of constant vigilance. Inside the walls, the nervous system could finally transition from the sympathetic state of fight or flight into the parasympathetic state of rest and digest. When a guest enters the home, the amygdala, the almond-shaped alarm center of the brain, perceives a sudden shift in the controlled environment. The amygdala does not distinguish between a friendly neighbor and a potential intruder. The amygdala only sees a change in the air, a change in the soundscape. A change in the predictable safety of the territory. This trigger causes a microscopic spike in cortisol, the stress hormone.
The body prepares for a confrontation, even if the conscious mind is smiling and offering a glass of water. This leads to the first category of individuals, the performer. For the performer, the home is not just a shelter.
The home is an externalized version of the self. Every object in the living room is a piece of a carefully curated identity.
The books on the shelf, the art on the walls, and even the brand of soap in the bathroom are all part of a silent presentation.
When a guest arrives, the performer feels an intense pressure to maintain this presentation. This is known as the burden of the social mask. The performer views the guest as a judge, even if the guest is incredibly kind. The performer worries that a single unwashed dish or a layer of dust on the television will reveal a hidden incompetence. The performer spends the entire duration of the visit scanning the room through the eyes of the guest.
The performer is not present in the conversation because the brain of the performer is too busy calculating the perceived value of the surroundings.
This constant self-surveillance is exhausting. It turns a simple social interaction into a high-stakes performance.
By the time the guest leaves, the performer feels a profound sense of depletion. The energy required to hold up the mask of the perfect host has drained the mental battery to zero.
Then there is the second category, the sensory absorber. These individuals often possess a highly sensitive nervous system. The sensory absorber views the home as a delicate ecosystem of sensory inputs. The home has a specific smell that represents safety. The home has a specific level of silence that allows for internal processing. The home has a specific arrangement of furniture that provides a sense of physical flow.
When a guest enters, the guest brings a chaotic wave of new sensory data.
The guest has a different scent. The guest speaks at a volume that disrupts the familiar silence. The guest moves through the space in ways that the host cannot predict. For the sensory absorber, this feels like a physical invasion. It is as if the guest is touching the very skin of the host.
The brain of the sensory absorber becomes overloaded. The prefrontal cortex, which handles complex social tasks, begins to struggle under the weight of this sensory bombardment.
This is why the sensory absorber often feels a desperate need to retreat to a bedroom or a bathroom during a long visit. The host is not being rude. The host is simply trying to prevent a total neurological shutdown. The root of this discomfort often stretches back into the history of the individual. Perhaps the individual grew up in a household where privacy was a luxury that was never granted. Perhaps the individual was raised by parents who demanded a perfect image for the neighbors, turning the home into a stage rather than a sanctuary.
In these cases, the brain learns that the presence of others is synonymous with the loss of autonomy. The home becomes a place of surveillance rather than a place of peace.
This historical conditioning creates a deep-seated association between hospitality and the loss of self. Every time the doorbell rings, the inner child of the individual feels a sense of panic,
fearing that the only place of true freedom is about to be taken away again. This is not a character flaw. This is a survival strategy developed by a brain that has learned to value the sanctity of the private space above all else. But now we must look deeper into the shadows of this discomfort to find the light. We must talk about the third category of individuals, those I call the sanctuary seekers. This is where the narrative shifts from one of fear to one of profound strength. To understand the sanctuary seeker, you must first understand the concept of the social armor. From the moment you step out of your front door in the morning, you are engaged in a silent, exhausting battle. You adjust your posture to look confident. You modulate your voice to sound pleasant. You smile when you are tired. You listen when you want to scream. You navigate the complex, often treacherous waters of human expectations and social cues. This is not being fake. It is a necessary survival skill, the price of admission to the modern world. But this armor is heavy. It is made of expectations, judgments, and the constant need to be perceived. Every minute you spend in the presence of others, your internal battery is leaking energy. For most people, this battery recharges in small bursts throughout the day. A quiet lunch, a walk in the park. But for you, the sanctuary seeker, the leak is much faster and the recharge is infinitely more difficult. Your brain is like a high-performance engine that requires a very specific, high-octane fuel. That fuel is total, unadulterated solitude. You do not just want to be alone, you need to be alone. Think about the moment you return home after a long day. You step inside and the door clicks shut behind you. Listen to that sound. In your mind, it is the sound of an airlock closing on a space station. It is the moment when the pressure of the world finally equalizes. You drop your keys, you kick off your shoes. You shed your heavy coat. But more importantly, you shed the social armor. You become a creature of pure, raw existence. You might sit on the kitchen floor for 20 minutes just staring at a patch of sunlight. You might eat cold leftovers straight from the container while standing at the counter. You might talk to yourself in a low, rambling voice that no one else ever hears. This is not madness. This is the sacred ritual of the return. You are painstakingly reclaiming the scattered pieces of your soul that the world has torn away throughout the day. And here is the twist. Your fear of guests is not a sign of social anxiety. It is not a symptom of misanthropy or coldness. It is, in fact, a testament to the depth and complexity of your inner world. You protect your home so fiercely because you intuitively understand that your home is the only place on this entire planet where the authentic version of you is allowed to live. When you feel that surge of panic at a guest's arrival, your soul is screaming in defense of its only sanctuary. You are not rejecting the person at the door. You are protecting the integrity of your own recovery process. Imagine for a moment that you are a professional deep-sea diver. You spend your entire day in the crushing, dark depths of the ocean, held together only by a highly pressurized suit. When you finally return to the surface and enter the decompression chamber, you are at your most vulnerable.
Your body is adjusting, your lungs are finding their natural rhythm again, your very cells are reorganizing. Now, imagine someone suddenly opening the hatch of that chamber just to say a quick hello.
The result is catastrophic. The sudden change in pressure would destroy you.
This is exactly what happens when a guest enters the home of a sanctuary seeker. You are in your decompression chamber. You are in the middle of a vital, life-sustaining process of psychic reorganization. The guest, no matter how well-meaning or beloved they are, represents a sudden, violent breach in that pressure. They force you to scramble for your armor. They force you to put the mask back on before you have finished healing the wounds of the day.
They interrupt the sacred, quiet work of simply being yourself.
So, it is time to stop looking at your desire for privacy as a cold wall you have built to keep people out. Start looking at it as a beautiful temple you have built to keep your spirit alive. Your need for a closed door is not a defect. It is a sign of your high emotional intelligence and your profound self-awareness. You know exactly what you need to survive in a world that never stops demanding your attention. You are not a broken host. You are the guardian of the most precious resource you possess, your own internal peace. This is not a weakness to be fixed. It is your superpower. It is the rare ability to recognize that in order to truly love and serve the world, you must first have a place where the world cannot find you. You are the architect of your own sanctuary, and there is no shame in keeping the gates closed until you are ready to face the light again.
The realization that your home is your dressing room and the world is your stage changes everything. It reframes that sudden surge of panic from a character flaw into a protective instinct. You now understand that you are not being hostile toward your friends or family. You are simply protecting the only space where you do not have to perform the exhaustion of being human.
When you view your need for privacy through this lens, the guilt begins to dissolve. You are not a bad person for wanting to keep your door locked. You are a person who values the integrity of their own recovery. You are someone who understands that in order to give your best self to others, you must first be allowed to be your rawest self alone. So, how do you navigate a world that values constant accessibility? How do you protect your sanctuary without burning bridges with the people you care about? The answer lies in a single practical micro-step. It is called the 15-minute buffer rule. The next time someone asks to drop by, instead of an immediate panic-induced yes or a guilt-ridden no, give yourself 15 minutes of honest reflection.
Do not reply to the text immediately. Put the phone down and take 3 deep breaths. Ask yourself one question. Do I have the energy to put my armor back on right now?
If the answer is no, give yourself permission to set a boundary.
You can say something as simple as, I would love to see you, but today I really need some quiet time to recharge. Can we do lunch later this week instead? Setting this boundary does not make you a recluse. It makes you a person with high self-respect. It teaches the people in your life how to love you in a way that does not drain you. It transforms your interactions from obligatory performances into genuine connections. When you finally do invite someone into your home, it will be because you actually have the space to receive them, not because you were too afraid to say no. You will find that your relationships actually deepen when they are no longer built on the foundation of your silent resentment. As you move forward, carry this truth with you like a shield. Your home is sacred. Your privacy is a necessity, not a luxury. Your need for solitude is the silent engine that powers your public life. You are the architect of your own peace, and you have every right to decide who crosses the threshold and when. Do not let the noise of the world convince you that your silence is a problem. Your silence is where you find yourself again. Your silence is where you heal.
Your silence is where you prepare for the battles of tomorrow. The next time you hear that knock at the door and feel that familiar tightening in your chest, do not judge yourself.
Simply acknowledge the guardian within you. Smile at your own need for safety. Know that you are doing the hard work of self-preservation.
You are not cold. You are not strange. You are simply someone who knows the value of a sanctuary in a world that never sleeps. Remember, you are not broken. You are a masterpiece in progress, and every masterpiece requires a quiet studio where the doors are sometimes locked.